What if the King of Pop didn't have to die that night? It's a question that's haunted millions for over a decade, and the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Because behind the headlines, behind the medical reports, and behind that shocking announcement on June 25th, 2009, there's a story that still doesn't add up. Michael Jackson, the man who changed music forever, was supposed to be on the brink of the greatest comeback in showbiz history. Instead, the world woke up to a nightmare. The King of Pop was gone. But here's the thing. Even after countless documentaries, court cases, and official explanations, too many questions remain unanswered. Why was Michael so desperate for sleep that he turned to a drug meant for surgery rooms? Who really allowed that routine to go on night after night? And why do so many people close to him claim that his death could have been prevented if only someone had stepped in sooner? Today, we're diving deep into the final days of Michael Jackson, not just what happened that night, but the chain of events that pushed one of the greatest entertainers in history to the edge. Because to understand how the King of Pop died, we first have to understand what broke him, long before the cameras stopped rolling. For most people, fame looks like a dream. The lights, the applause, the fortune. But for Michael Jackson, fame came with scars that never fully healed. It all started in 1984, on what should have been one of the biggest moments of his career. He was filming a Pepsi commercial, a symbol of how massive he'd become. Cameras were rolling, fireworks were blasting, and then, in an instant, everything went wrong. A firework exploded too early, igniting Michael's hair. Within seconds, his scalp was engulfed in flames as the crowd screamed. Crew members rushed to help, but the damage was already done. Second and third degree burns seared into his head, leaving him in agony. That night didn't just leave scars. It introduced him to something far more dangerous: painkillers. Doctors prescribed heavy medication to help him cope, and from that point on, Michael's life would never be the same. He was the biggest star on the planet, yet he was also a man in constant pain, physical and emotional. Every performance, every rehearsal, every public appearance came with pressure to be perfect. But behind that perfection was a body that was slowly breaking down. Over the years, the injuries kept piling up. The stage accidents, the surgeries, the endless rehearsals, they all took their toll. And somewhere along the way, pain relief stopped being temporary. It became essential. Friends later said that even during his biggest tours, Michael would smile for the cameras, hit every dance move with flawless precision, and then collapse backstage, clutching his back or his legs, whispering that he couldn't take it anymore. But he kept going, because to him, the show couldn't stop. And maybe that's where the real tragedy began. The moment he decided that the pain didn't matter, as long as the world kept clapping. But the pain didn't just come from the body. There was something deeper, something emotional that would soon drive him toward total exhaustion. Because the physical injuries were only the beginning, the real decline was still to come. As the years went on, the pain didn't fade. It evolved. What started as physical agony slowly turned into something darker. Michael Jackson wasn't just battling injuries anymore. He was battling his own mind. The pressure to remain the King of Pop became an invisible weight that followed him everywhere. Every time he stepped on stage, every time he looked into a camera, he was chasing a standard even he could no longer reach. Behind closed doors, people close to him began noticing changes. His sleep patterns were erratic. He would stay awake for days, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, unable to shut his mind off. The same perfectionism that made him a legend was now tearing him apart. Rumors began spreading, whispers of secret treatments, of doctors flying in and out of his home at odd hours. Some claimed he was chasing any solution that promised rest, peace, or just a moment of quiet. By the late 1990s, even his closest friends admitted they barely recognized him. The man who once electrified crowds now looked exhausted, frail, and increasingly withdrawn. Publicly, Michael insisted he was fine, but behind the scenes, insomnia and pain had become constant companions. The spotlight that had once made him feel alive was now blinding him. Then came the reliance, the medications prescribed to keep him moving, performing, smiling. One for pain, one for anxiety, one for sleep. And when those stopped working, he needed something stronger. That's when a new substance entered the picture, one most people would only ever encounter inside an operating room, a white, milky sedative called propofol. To doctors, it was a surgical anesthetic. To Michael, it became something else entirely, his only escape. He called it milk, his private lullaby in liquid form. And over time, his body learned to depend on it the same way as fans depended on his music, completely and endlessly. By the early 2000s, Michael wasn't just an entertainer struggling with pressure. He was a man trapped between exhaustion and addiction. And when the offer for his biggest comeback came in 2009, he saw it as redemption. But no one realized that this chance at revival would also become his final performance. Because the same drive that made him unstoppable on stage would soon push him past the point of no return. By early 2009, Michael Jackson was ready, or at least he wanted to believe he was. After years away from the stage, he had signed a massive contract with AEG Live for a residency of 50 shows at London's O2 Arena. The tour would be called This Is It, a title that now feels hauntingly prophetic. At first, it sounded like the perfect comeback, a carefully planned return, a chance to remind the world why he was the greatest performer who ever lived. But behind the smiles and the announcements, there was something else. Panic. Friends later revealed that Michael wasn't sleeping. Not a little, not at all. His body was exhausted, his mind restless, and the schedule was brutal. Rehearsals ran late into the night at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. He'd dance for hours, give notes to his team, adjust lighting, choreography, sound. Nothing escaped his attention. But every hour he spent perfecting the show drained him even more. And the stakes? Unbelievably high. According to reports, if he backed out, he'd owe tens of millions. He couldn't afford another public failure. After years of lawsuits, canceled tours, and endless media scrutiny, Michael saw This Is It as his shot at redemption. One last time to silence the critics and prove he was still the king. But physically, he wasn't ready. Behind closed doors, his team watched him struggle to keep up. One night, dancers said he looked disoriented, moving through routines like a man fighting to stay awake. Another time, he clutched his back and whispered, "I can't take it anymore." Still, he refused to stop. When you've spent your whole life performing through pain, quitting isn't an option. It's a humiliation. So instead of resting, Michael turned to something he'd trusted for years: medication. But this time, he wouldn't be alone in managing it. As part of the AEG deal, he requested a personal physician, someone who could be there around the clock to keep him healthy through the rehearsal grind. Enter Dr. Conrad Murray, a physician who'd known Michael for years and who, according to reports, understood exactly what his famous patient wanted and what he couldn't live without. With Dr. Murray on board, Michael believed he finally had the help he needed to survive the comeback. But the truth was, he wasn't getting medical support. He was getting access. Night after night, the King of Pop would finish rehearsal, leave the stage drenched in sweat, smile for his fans, and then go home to be sedated into sleep. It was a fragile system, one that only worked as long as everything went perfectly. But as history would prove, perfection is never guaranteed. And what happened inside that Los Angeles mansion would change music history forever. Each night after rehearsal, Michael Jackson left the stage drained. He'd wave to fans, disappear into his mansion, and head straight to a room that looked less like a bedroom and more like a clinic. IV stands, medical bags, a doctor waiting. This was how the King of Pop slept. Dr. Conrad Murray was there almost every night, preparing Michael's milk, propofol, a hospital-grade anesthetic meant for surgeries, not sleep. Michael trusted it completely. He said it was the only way he could quiet his mind. The process was routine: a small dose to relax, a drip to stay asleep. But without hospital equipment or oxygen monitors, it was a ticking time bomb. Propofol doesn't heal the body, it shuts it down. And every night, Michael's body grew weaker. Still, he kept going. Rehearse all day, sedate all night. To the world, he was preparing for his grand return. But behind those closed doors, his life was hanging by a thread. One that would finally snap on June 25th, 2009. June 25th, 2009. After a long night of rehearsals, Michael returned home, exhausted, restless, and desperate for sleep. He asked Dr. Murray for help, just like every night. A few sedatives, then the milk. Propofol. Michael drifted off, but this time he didn't wake up. No hospital monitors, no oxygen, just silence. Dr. Murray left the room for a few minutes. When he came back, Michael wasn't breathing. Instead of calling 911 right away, he tried CPR. Too late, too slow. At 2:26 p.m., the world stopped. Michael Jackson, gone. And the most heartbreaking part? A few minutes sooner, the right call, the right care, he could have lived. The world demanded answers. How could Michael Jackson, surrounded by doctors and security, die alone in his own home? Investigators called it a homicide. Dr. Conrad Murray claimed he gave only a small dose of propofol, but evidence told another story. Used vials, IV bags, contradictions everywhere. In 2011, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter. But was he the only one to blame? Many pointed at AEG Live, the company behind This Is It, saying the pressure to perform pushed Michael too far. Everyone saw he was struggling, but no one stopped the machine. Others whispered darker theories, that there was more to the story, something hidden. Nothing was ever proven, but one truth remained. Too many people stood by while Michael Jackson fell apart. When the world lost Michael Jackson, it didn't just lose a star. It lost an entire era. He wasn't just a performer, he was a movement, a symbol of what music could be when passion meets perfection. His comeback was supposed to rewrite history. Instead, it became his goodbye. The This Is It film gave fans one last glimpse. The smile, the voice, the magic that never faded. Even at his weakest, he gave everything. But behind the legend was a man who just wanted peace, sleep, love, and a little bit of normal life. He never truly found it. Today, his music still plays everywhere. His influence runs through every stage, every dancer, every beat. But fans still ask the same question: what if? What if someone had stepped in sooner? What if the king of pop had lived long enough to finally rest, not in silence, but in peace?